Okay, Germany had a federal election the other day. The residents of two former East German states, Berlin and Mecklenburg, also had regional elections. They voted for new regional parliaments. There was also a referendum in Berlin that you may have heard about on the expropriation of 226,000 privately owned housing units. And that passed with 56%, which is no surprise because about 70% of everyone in Berlin voted for extreme far left parties. Germany as a whole went way to the left. Berlin went way further left than any of them. In the lead up to this, I've been talking about in the community section of this YouTube channel that the Green Party in Berlin has used actual Antifa logos in their campaign literature and had a campaign video with an Antifa flag in it and everything. And Berlin is where the Green Party did the best. But like 70% of the people voted for far left parties. Now, left-wing circles in America are actually celebrating this referendum right now, and there's all kinds of clickbait, which is full of stuff that's completely wrong. Earlier today, I logged on to Facebook, and one of the first things that comes up is a sponsored post from some far-left group in America that paid to broadcast this to, countless tens of thousands of people, I guess, maybe hundreds of thousands, saying the people of Berlin have just voted to expropriate the housing from the evil, greedy landlords, and now everything will be fair and equal, and Berlin will be a shining light to the rest of the world and an example for everyone else, including America, to follow. And the guy had no idea what he was talking about, and it was total nonsense, but that's the reality. Radical leftists in America have heard about this referendum in Berlin, and they're cheering for it. The first big caveat is it's non-binding. So all the clickbait is false. It's non-binding. So let me explain exactly what it is. You're probably aware that for a long time there was a East Germany and a West Germany. East Germany was a totalitarian communist state under the control of the Socialist Unity Party, which has now been rebranded as Die Linke, which means the left. Now, Berlin, you probably know, was divided by the Berlin Wall, which East Germany called the anti-fascist barrier. And when the Berlin Wall came down and Germany was reunified, Berlin owned all kinds of housing. For example, the communist-controlled section of Berlin was building the Soviet-style apartments, which are famously, shaped like giant squares and giant rectangles. And I'm told that if you want to see examples of this Soviet style apartments, Berlin is the best place to go to because the Germans maintained it so well. You can find countless videos on YouTube showing these apartments in Russia and other parts of the former East Bloc where they're, run down and now it's like the super cheap apartments and it's the whole Gopnik stereotype. But in Germany, supposedly they still look like they were just made recently. But after reunification, the state of Berlin owned all this housing and they began selling it to the private sector. A while back, there was a referendum passed in Berlin to freeze rent prices in 2019. And then landlords would not be allowed to raise prices after that. Of course, there was a whole bunch of things left out. There was no freeze on utility prices. There was no freeze on raising property tax. There was a bunch of other factors. So the German courts ruled it unconstitutional. So this was the next big idea. Oh, well, we'll just really stick it to these evil, greedy landlords and force them to sell their property back to the government. So what they're calling for is, in America, we call this eminent domain. I don't know what it is called in Germany. But essentially, the referendum, it passed 56%, and it calls for using eminent domain to seize 226,000 housing units from the private sector to be turned into low-cost public housing. And there's a million problems with this, but as I said before, it's non-binding. I do not expect very much to come of this, but I expect multitudes of clown world insanity to come out of Berlin in the immediate future, nevertheless. So, about the federal election, the Christian Democrats did absolutely terrible. They've been in power for a long time. In the 1990s, they were a conservative party. Angela Merkel has been moving them further and further and further to the left every year for the past 20 years. Now, the German media is saying that huge numbers of Christian Democrat voters from 2017 voted for either the SPD or the Green Party in this election. The SPD was the big winner. They did great. And there's a faction of the Christian Democrats called the Values Voters. This is the conservative faction. And in some place, like from what I can tell in Baden-Württemberg, this is a big faction of the party, because that's a more conservative area of the country. So they are blaming this disaster on Merkel and the other Christian Democrat leaders who've been pushing the party to the left. And they have been saying that this has all been brought on by the historic turn to the left by the Christian Democrats. They're calling for all new leaders. They want the top leadership purged, and they want to go back to being a conservative party. Now, I don't think that's actually going to happen. For starters, the Christian Democrats, the leadership, is reaching out to the Green Party in hopes of forming a coalition with the radical far-left Green Party so they can keep a Christian Democrat prime minister in power, even though the SPD got the most votes. So the Christian Democrats, the SPD is one of their main standard coalition partners in Germany. So in the federal government and also in the various state governments, their standard coalition partners are the SPD and the Free Democrats. But they're reaching out to the Green Party saying, what kind of deal can we make? Which means that the Christian Democrats are only going even further to the left. And I mean, realistically, if the Christian Democrats keep a Christian Democrat as a prime minister by forming a coalition with the Green Party, it's only making it more obvious that they have gone so far to the left that they've essentially merged with the Green Party and the Social Democrats. And these parties are so radical. Essentially, the Green Party wants to completely deindustrialize Germany. They're already phasing out all nuclear. Most nuclear reactors in Germany have already been shut down. The final ones are being shut down within months. They're already in the beginning of phasing out coal. They're covering the country in government-subsidized wind turbines, which are extremely inefficient. It's a terrible way to make your electricity, especially land-based wind turbines. But the Green Party says we're going to completely deindustrialize, even though Europe is producing less pollution and less CO2 per year each year anyway, especially Northern Europe. And China and India are vastly more than making up the difference. They say that Germany needs to completely deindustrialize and live off of wind turbines and basically become like a third world country, because they want to invite the whole third world to move in and get benefits, which is then going to collapse those benefits. While at the same time, China and India more than make up for the pollution that Germany is not putting out anyway. The Social Democrats are kind of like, oh, well, we want to do the exact same thing, but, 20 years is too fast. Let's make it 30 years. And the Christian Democrats are like, well, okay, we agree with all that, but we want to slow it down to 40 years. And, the Free Democrats are supposed to be the pro-business liberals. But even they're like, oh, okay, well, we agree, but let's drag it out to 50 years. The only conservative party is Alternative for Deutschland, the AfD, which is basically the exact same thing as what the Christian Democrats were in the 90s. They're the only party that's saying, hey, we don't want to deindustrialize and destroy our own country and open our borders to the entire third world until all benefits collapse and everyone's equally third world poor. And so they are called, racists and fascists and all this stuff in the media. Netflix had a whole series demonizing the AfD recently. I made a YouTube video about that once. Unfortunately, nationwide, the AfD also went down in support. Now, in the former East German states of Saxony and Thuringia, they were the single largest party. They went up slightly in support in East Germany, although they went way down in Berlin. And they went way down in Western Germany. The part of Western Germany they did the best in is Baden-Württemberg. So in the former Western Germany, the most conservative part is the southern two states, Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg. Now, Bavaria has its own version of the Christian Democrats, which for a long time was still a lot more conservative, at least their rhetoric in public was, than the National Christian Democrats, but even they have moved way to the left. But Baden-Württemberg is like Bavaria. The voters tend to be more conservative than the northern part of the former West Germany. So if you look at the heat maps of who voted for what, it's easy to tell that in Eastern Germany, the most conservative part is the southern strip of the former East Germany. And then the closer you get to Berlin, the more left-wing it gets. And then when you go north of Berlin, it starts to get less and less. And then when you get to Mecklenburg, then you start to get significant conservative voters again. The AfD was the second place party in Mecklenburg, although they actually came down in support slightly. But in Saxony, in many of the counties in Saxony, they got over 30% of the vote. In many counties in Thuringia and Saxony-Anhalt, they got over 20% of the vote. And then you spin around above Berlin, and they got close to 20% in several counties in Mecklenburg. And then the state that they did the best in in the former Western Germany is Baden-Württemberg, which is the other half of the southern part next to Bavaria. So at any rate, things do not look that promising for Germany right now, but I'm sure that they're going to provide us with a lot of entertainment with the insane clown world shenanigans that are about to commence. All right, thanks for watching this video. Click the like button, post a comment below, tell me what you think about this, and click the subscribe button. New video every few days.